Hi, my name is Brandon, and I'm an alcoholic and addict in recovery. Last 2 days, I've talked about the descent into alcoholism and addiction, what it looks like, how we get into this cycle of addiction that becomes harder and harder to break out of. Today, I want to talk some about what it looks like when we decide to quit. And reading first from This Naked Mind by Annie Grace, she talks a little bit about that moment of realization when we say, okay, we've got to quit. What are we going to do about this? And she goes into what it looks like to quit based off sheer willpower, and really does a great job of explaining why quitting on willpower alone can very easily and very likely lead to a recurrence of drug or alcohol use. And so once you realize alcohol controls your life, the quest to regain control begins. Sadly, many people avoid this journey even though they dearly want freedom from alcohol's control because they're afraid it will be impossible or result in lifelong pain. Stopping right there for a second, that's certainly the reason that I avoided a lot of the work to actually quit drinking or quit doing drugs. I was worried that life would be painful without them, and that the process of quitting would be painful. And part of this was backed up by evidence from my experience quitting cigarettes. That was a painful experience until the time that I actually quit. And so part of what I had to do was look at what was different about the time I actually quit smoking than all the other dozens of times that I tried to quit before them. What was different about that one time that's made it stick for now over 7 years? What was different about that? So I'll talk about that in a second. She goes on to say, when you stop drinking through sheer willpower, you start to see the benefits. You become healthier and your situation in life improves. The reasons you quit begin to fade into the background. Remember, this is when you're quitting based off sheer willpower. Things start to get better, and then all of a sudden you start to forget about the reasons that you quit in the first place. Inevitably, you start to feel healthy and strong. You feel empowered because of the strength you have shown by quitting. You forget the reasons you quit to begin with. Humans have selective memory. We tend to remember the good things rather than the whole picture. You forget the fights with your spouse, the hangovers, or the stupid things you did or said. You forget your misery, and the reasons you quit no longer seem as important as they did before. You heal, and in healing, the reasons to avoid drinking lose their immediacy. You find an excuse for just one, and suddenly you're back in the mental misery of alcohol addiction. It makes no difference if you go straight to the blackout stage or if it's a gradual descent that takes years. You have not changed. Alcohol has not changed. Society has not changed. What would make this time any different than the last? So quitting based off of sheer willpower is something that is extremely difficult for most people to do. And most people who have experienced that and then gone on to maintain sobriety using a program of recovery will tell you that quitting based off sheer willpower, and when we talk about sheer willpower, we're just talking about all you do is remove alcohol from your life. That's it. And then you just bear down and white knuckle through it. That's extremely difficult. And my experience with quitting cigarettes bears that truth out. The first couple of times that I tried to quit smoking, just by said, okay, as of this day, I'm going to just stop smoking. It was terrible. I was, most of those times, I was back smoking within a few hours. And I had days in there where I would quit smoking 2 or 3 times in the same day. And part of the problem was I wasn't educated on cigarette and nicotine addiction. And I didn't have a plan for how to move forward and change my life in order not only to cope with the absence of cigarettes, but to capitalize on the absence of cigarettes. And I had to look, the time that I successfully quit was a time where I looked and said, what am I going to be able to do in life that I can't do when I'm smoking? What can I do in life? And it was things like exercise and running long distances without getting winded. It was things like not having to take my clothes to the dry cleaners because they stunk all the time, and being able to spend that money on other things that I would prefer to spend it on. It was things like being able to go to a movie and sit down and enjoy a movie, or even just at home watch a movie without having to pause it every 30 minutes to get up and go have a cigarette. So all of these things, I had to make a mental and actual physical list of what are the things that I can now enjoy in life that I couldn't enjoy when I was smoking cigarettes. And I had to do the same thing when I quit alcohol. I had to do the same thing when I quit smoking pot. What are the things that I'm going to be able to actually enjoy in life? When you get into recovery, and you really get into the spiritual side of recovery, where if your program focuses on a spiritual aspect of growth, where you are actively trying to improve yourself on a daily basis and really trying to learn to live at peace with the people in the world around you, then you start to immediately see both the rewards that are involved in sobriety, as well as the work that's involved. And it becomes very easy to see that this work is work that cannot happen while I am using. And another part of the program of recovery I work, which is AA, is that you work with other people so that you're able to talk to them about your experience. Through talking with them, you recount your own difficulties with addiction. And by doing that, it keeps fresh in your head all the reasons why you quit. Because I, at almost 2 years of complete sobriety and almost 5 years of abstinence from alcohol, I sometimes get those fleeting thoughts of, well, maybe now after you've learned some things, you could go back and dabble in these things and have a drink here or there, smoke a little bit here or there, and you'd be okay. And I'm fortunate that I work with people and recount my struggles with addiction enough that it's easy for me to dismiss those thoughts and say, well, no, that's not true at all, because I know for a fact that the way my addiction works is this: as soon as I get that high, as soon as I get a taste of whatever it is that I'm consuming, I'm going to want more. And the cycle of addiction will begin again for me. I know that for a fact, and just by working with others and recounting my own experiences, that keeps that fresh in my mind, so that I avoid the situation Annie describes in the book, where she says that as time goes on, you continue to, you start to forget the reasons that you quit. Working with others, relaying that kind of information keeps that fresh in your head. So she gets into this in more detail a little bit later in the book, and I'll look at it in more detail there as well. But in general, it's really important to consider that quitting an addiction through sheer willpower alone. It's a very, very difficult thing to do that is the results are not typically what you're looking for. The reason programs of recovery exist is that through a program of recovery, by working with other people, you are able to harness experience and strength that of generations of people before you in order to quit what to a lot of people seems like an insurmountable task. By doing that, you increase your chances of being sober the rest of your life, which is what all addicts really should want. We should want that lifelong sobriety so that we can live peacefully, happily, and not white-knuckling it through the day, just saying, I just got to make it a few more hours without drinking. That's all for today. I'll be back tomorrow with more. Have a good one.